Le troisième écrivain résident au mois de juin est Carsten Jensen. Il est romancier et essayiste, danois, également reporter et critique. Il est né en 1952 dans la petite ville de Marstal, sur l'île de Ærø, dans l'archipel danois, dans la mer Baltique. Après une maîtrise en littérature comparée, il commence sa carrière comme critique pour un certain nombre de journaux scandinaves. Ses premiers écrits ont pour thème la critique culturelle. Ses romans, y compris son premier récit, je vais essayer de le dire en danois, Jeg har sett verden begynne, I have seen the world begin, traite de la connaissance du monde. Ce dernier, qui fut un immense succès au Danemark, est un travelogue, un carnet de voyage autour du monde. J'ai vu le monde commencer. Ce best-seller a également reçu de nombreux prix littéraires. Carsten est un auteur très suivi pour ses commentaires et critiques politiques, mais il est avant tout romancier. L'une de ses œuvres majeures est le roman Wie die Drukkene, We the Drowned, Nous, les noyés, publié en anglais par Vintage et en français par Libella Maren Sell. Le roman se déroule dans la petite ville de Marstal, où il est né, et raconte l'histoire de 4 générations de marins à partir de 1848. Roman épique et tourmenté qui nous fait passer des rochers de Terre-Neuve au Canada à la végétation luxuriante de Samoa, des bars de Tasmanie aux côtes glacées de Russie. Saisissant et rude, il donne la parole aux veuves des noyés autant qu'aux morts des profondeurs. Il a été publié dans 20 pays et vendu à plus d'1 million d'exemplaires. Ce roman a été élu meilleur roman danois des 25 dernières années. Une pièce de théâtre basée sur ce roman a également été produite et un film est en préparation. Son dernier roman, Den første Stein, La première pierre, publié en français par Phébus, trouve son origine dans l'engagement politique de Carsten et s'inscrit dans la tradition des grands romans de guerre de la littérature. Le roman nous entraîne dans un voyage puissant et inoubliable au cœur de la guerre contemporaine en Afghanistan. Carsten a reçu un grand nombre de prix, dont la bourse d'honneur à vie de l'État danois et le prestigieux prix Olof Palme pour sa contribution à la défense des droits de l'homme. Carsten.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. Makes me sound much better than I am. And thank you for being here in this amazing place. Actually, it's the first time ever I've been in a writing place like this. So for me, everything is new here. And I'm in the most pleasant company I could have dreamt of, with fellow writers from all over the world. I want to read a piece to you from the novel that you introduced so well, We the Drowned. And I'll say a bit more about it, because actually the title is a bit mysterious. Why is it called We the Drowned? What does that refer to? And it refers to that little town of Marstal, where the action takes place. And it takes place in the, I almost say, the rest of the globe too. But if in the 100 years it covers 4 generations, you went for a walk in the local cemetery and were a bit interested in statistics, you would discover that there weren't as many men buried as there should have been, because the greater part of the local population were sailors, and a lot of them never came back. So there were no tombs, there was no saying goodbye, there was no rituals, no priest, no grave to attend to for the widows and the kids. There was just a laconic telegram arriving that the ship had disappeared on the sea approximately that date or that date in the months of whatever, November, maybe. And so I somehow felt, growing up in the town, and my father was a sailor too, I had a growing feeling of an obligation toward all these tombs that were not there, to somehow bring back the dead and tell their story. And so I started working on what I, in the beginning, didn't realize was going to be a novel, because I actually, after a couple of, let's be honest, not very good novels, I somehow felt that that was not my calling. But I realized the story was so big somehow that it could only be told as a novel, based on research, but with the liberating element of fiction as well. And the reason is also that the history of that town is so unusual. It is a very small town, a couple of thousand inhabitants, but they managed in a few decades in the 19th century to create the second biggest fleet in Denmark. Only Copenhagen, the capital, had more ships belonging than that little place. So everybody was familiar with the world, going the most amazing places. Everybody had seen, literally, the world. And you used to say, your choice is not whether you're going to be a sailor or not. Your choice is, at the age of 13, whether you're going to embark on the Sea Gulf or the Albatross. That's the choice you have. So there isn't actually much romantic about it. When I started writing the book, I realized I was going back to the town. I hadn't been there for many years. And that caused a lot of curiosity among the locals. What's he doing here? So I started, together with the local public library, to organize public meetings where I told them about the work in progress, read from the unfinished text, and said, we are having a deal here. You're getting a book about your town, and I want your stories. And that's how they ended up feeling this was not my book, it was their book. And so sometimes people would come up to me in the street and said, I've got a grandfather, he must be in your book. And I said, listen, this is your story, but it's my book. And I am the captain of this ship. And that was a metaphor, of course, being sailors, they understood. So the little excerpt, well, another thing was that it was often described as a kind of family saga, covering 4 generations. But it isn't. It's a story of broken families, because in every one of the families we get to know the father disappears. He doesn't come back. It might be war, Second World War, First World War, demanded a lot of sacrifices from the little town, or it might just be the eternal enemy, the sea, that has taken them. And I felt such a tight community needed a special way of telling the story. So that's why the storyteller, is not an individual or third person. It is first person plural, we. But I also realized that the world of women and men was so dramatically different that this we could only cover the men. So in the second half of the book, you witness a rebellion on part of the women. They are not happy with the lives they are forced to live in solitude. So much time alone with the kids, and sooner or later for a lot of them it ended up with being alone forever, having already lost maybe brothers, sons, other family members. So it is a story about also the abyss there sometimes is between the lives of men and the lives of women. And here the women are the rebels. This little extract I'm going to read to you takes place during the First World War. And there was a lot of losses. A lot of sailors didn't come back, even though Denmark was neutral. But the sea was always a battlefield, whether you belong to a neutral country or not. And so here's a father who's gone missing. Here's a little boy alone with his mother. And there's an old lady in town who realizes that these little boys and girls need a substitute for the father who's gone forever. So she engages some of the old men to be somehow grandfathers. And in this occasion, it's an old captain, very experienced with his men, a tough captain, but who's never become a father himself. So he's very shy. He doesn't know what to do with a kid, but somehow he feels an obligation. And this is their first meeting, which later becomes so important for both of them. And they go for a walk down by the harbor. It's winter, it's cold, and the captain feels helpless. How on earth do you speak to children? And he's very scared of speaking of the missing father. So here we go. The boy walked silently beside him down to the harbor. It was a clear, sunny day. The boy had no mittens on, and his hands were red with cold. What happened to your mittens? I lost them. They walked along Havnegade to Dammskibsbroen and looked at the water. A thin layer of ice had formed during the night, and the sun sparkled in the white frost around it. Albert, and this is the old man, felt he should speak, but didn't know what to say. What did you talk to about to children? His irritation with the widow increased. Come, he said to the boy, who looked lost in thought at the side of the frozen water. They walked on along the quay, past the coal depot, and down towards Prinsenbroen. What is it like to drown? The boy asked. Your mouth fills up with water, and then you can't breathe anymore. Have you tried drowning? No, Albert said. If you drown, you die. And I'm here. Does everyone drown at the end? Most people don't drown. My pa drowned, the boy said in a tone that implied that this kind of death gave him a sense of pride and elevated his father. Then his voice grew more hesitant. If we drown, do we ever come back? No, we never come back. My ma says my pa's an angel now. You must listen to what your mother says. Albert was feeling more and more uncomfortable. He dreaded that the boy might certainly burst into tears. What would he do then? Take him back home? He couldn't return with a sobbing child. That would be like losing your cargo and letting the sea take your ship. He tried to distract the boy. The harbor was full of moored vessels, some kept back by their owners because of the war, others simply home for the winter. There was nothing to indicate that Marstal's day as a seafaring town were coming to an end. Albert pointed to the ships. Are you going to sea when you grow up? He asked, and instantly regretted it. Will I drown then, like my pa? Most sailors come home again. Then they grow old like me and die in their beds one day. I want to be a sailor like my pa, the boy said, but I don't want to drown and get eaten by a fish, and I don't want to die in my bed either, because my bed is for sleeping in. Is there any way not to die? No, Albert said, there isn't. But you're very young. You have plenty of years left to live. That's almost the same as not dying. Would you like to die? I wouldn't mind now. I'm very old. So it doesn't matter if I do. So you're not sad? No, I'm not sad. My ma's sad. She's always crying. Then I comfort her. You're a good boy, Albert said. He pointed across the water. Look, there's a steamer. When you go to sea, it'll probably be on a steamer. Can steamers sink? The boy asked. Albert looked at the black-painted steel hull. Yes, he says. Yes, they can.